Okay, continue with discussion of the fact that all event handlers are being handled by a class. If you had an awful lot of event handlers, I don't know, you had a control that had, I don't know, 30 or 40 buttons or, you know, all sorts of other kinds of controls that needed to be listened to, you might actually consider just creating a separate class. You know, go over here and say, hey, I want to name a new class, and I want to call it handler or something. Just to kind of to grab all the event handlers and kind of separate them from the rest of the code. You could do that. I'll confess, I typically don't. I have my event handlers almost always in the same class file as my main class, because that's where I'm going to be doing an awful lot of my input validation. And I want the input validation to be like in main activity. But I'm just saying, you could, instead of having this up here, you could just point it to someplace else. In other words, don't implement it here. Create you another class and do the implementation. And then point it to that other thing, whatever that other thing is. Okay, so if you had several types of events, not just button events, think about how complicated this would be. Right now, this is just the click. So what if you were implementing like 3 or 4 different types of event handlers, not just click event handlers? This could get a little unwieldy after a while. You can probably kind of sort of imagine you'd have like 3 or 4 of these things stuck in there. I mean, that's okay. You could just keep implementing. Just implement click, implement, you know, change this, and implement all these other types of interfaces that exist. Okay, on page 303, they start talking about the concept of an anonymous class. Okay, whew. Now I'm going to fake this because it just makes it a little easier to deal with. So let's just assume that we have an employee class out there. Okay, we don't have an employee class, but that's beside the point. So if I said employee imp1 is equal to new employee. Okay, ignore the fact that this thing doesn't exist. Okay, so imp1 clearly is the thing that's on the stack, right? And it has a name. And what's its name? Well, its name is imp1. Okay? So then let's have a method down here where I'm getting ready to pass that employee object to this method. Okay? So again, I'm faking it. So I'm going to call this one, I don't know, another method. And I'm going to pass imp1 because imp1 is what this guy's expecting. Okay. So I create a class and then I store it in a variable, a local variable called imp1, and then I pass that local variable off to some other method. Okay. Now I can do this without actually, I can make this a little shorter. Okay. Let me show you an alternate technique. An alternate technique would be, say, another method, and then just say new employee, like that. Now this is called an anonymous class. Can you see why it's anonymous? So when I did it here, I stored the thing in a named variable called employee1. It has a name. But down here, I'm passing a brand new employee, but I did not assign it to a variable. Therefore, this is an anonymous class. Now it works. If you don't provide a name for it, it still gets stored on the stack. That can't be avoided. It's just that you don't know what it's called and you can't refer back to it. Okay, so this is the essence of what is called an anonymous class. Typically what happens with an anonymous class is when you have a parameter, okay? A parameter. Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna fake this some more. I'm gonna fake an array list. So I'm gonna do an array list of type employee. And once again, of course, this thing doesn't list. It doesn't exist. So ignore the red. Okay, so I just want to add some employees to this thing, but I don't care what they're called. So I could just do imp list Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to. Oh, well, no. Well, it helps if you spell it right. Okay. And then I can just say new employee. And I could do this over again. Like I want to add 5 employees, but I don't really care what their names are, so to speak. I could just do this. Okay? So this is the essence of using an anonymous class. I'm just creating a class. 99 and 44, 100% of the time, whenever you use an anonymous class, you're doing it inside the parentheses of a method, meaning it's being called as an argument. Okay? That's where anonymous classes are being used. There's nothing wrong with doing it this way. I could say, imp2 is equal to, and then add imp2, and then imp3 is equal to, and add imp3, and imp4 is equal to, but sometimes you don't need to know what the name of the thing is, particularly right here, okay? When, in this particular, well, that's a dumb example. Okay, so the idea is that if you don't assign it to a variable, it's considered anonymous. That's all you need to know about anonymous methods. Another one is called an inner class. I could just build me another class. So I can create a class inside a class. I'm just going to find me a blank spot that's at this indentation level, and I'm going to do private class employee. Okay? So now I have a public class here, and inside I have another class called employee, which makes this guy kind of shut up now, right? Because there is such a thing as an employee. Now, we've actually kind of sort of done this already, believe it or not, because we have done an enumeration. And I didn't want to get into the details, but enumerations are actually classes. They really are. So a class inside a class has a name. It's called an inner class. Okay? How convenient is this? Are we going to need it in the next chapter? Yes, we are. Okay, so this last 2 parts, you should have learned 2 things. What is an anonymous class? That's one that's not assigned to a variable. It exists. It just hasn't been assigned to a variable. And then what is an inner class? And that's just a class inside a class. No big deal. But the next chapter, we're going to be doing anonymous inner classes a lot as technique number 3 for how to deal with, writing event handlers. Okay, we have made it to the end of this chapter and introduced a couple of concepts that we're going to need for the next chapter. So please do pay attention, and we'll see you guys again in the next video.